joto. Okay. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you very much for joining us in our F.I.R.E session today. I'm glad that you always create the time to just be with us, to watch us, to interact with us, to raise questions as we go. So thank you. I hope we have all had a good week, even as we come to a close of the week. Before we start, I'm going to pray, just to allow God to be with us even as we start. Let's pray. Our dear Father, we come before you this evening, Lord. We want to thank you yet again for the gift of life. We don't take it for granted that we are alive, we are well, and we are healthy, and we're even able to have a session like this. We say thank you. Lord, we want to welcome you here today, that you will be with us even as we have these conversations around debt. I pray that you will guide these conversations. I pray that you will enable us just to learn one from another. You'll enable us to even transform our lives, Lord, that we might become better people. Thank you for all our viewers, wherever they are, those who are watching us live, those who will watch us later, all our investors, all our partners, all the Savorites in general, Lord. I thank you for all of them, and I just pray for a special blessing upon all of them. Be with us even as we start. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you, guys. Unfortunately, Mr. Mcharo is not here. I had promised that he will be here this Friday, but he's still held up in the hills, so he wasn't able to join us today, but he will be able to join us next week, hopefully. I see Gerald Kiragu. Gerald, thank you. Thank you for always joining us, and even just letting us know that you're here. I see you've written attending debt marketing is done every day. All day on communication channels, making it look like the norm. Nguhi Muturi, with many lending institutions in this era, it's very tempting and easy to go into debt, waiting to learn more. Thank you, Gerald, and thank you, Nguhi, for sharing the very first comments today, and I look forward to more interactions, even as we discuss about debt. Last week we talked about starting with the why, and I forgot to mention a book that perhaps I would encourage us to read. There's a book called Start with Why by Simon Sinek. I'd encourage you to just look it up, probably watch some of the videos and even read the book, just to expound on the conversations we had last week. Yeah? Okay, so we start with debt now, and I'm going to share a story. Hopefully this story is going to form the basis of our discussions today. I'll start with a story. Let me just call it a story. Then I'll continue with our story, our personal stories, and then we'll go to Savo and pick it up from there. I'd encourage us to ask as many questions as possible. We'll try and answer them as we go along. Okay, so here is my story. So there's this lady, started life, got married pretty young. By the time she was about 32, she had a number of children. I won't mention how many, but she had many children. And then, unfortunately, at 32, her husband passed away. And she had the responsibility of raising all these children by herself. At the beginning, things were not so hard because, the old man had left a few things here and there. But as time went by, it became extremely difficult. I think when her husband died, her firstborn was in class 7, her lastborn was barely in class 1. And after that happened, she desired that all her kids would go to school to whatever level that they desired. I mean, she desired to provide for her children, all the things that perhaps her kids would have gotten if their dad was alive. So at one point, she needed to not really start a business, she needed to buy a truck, because she was in the transport business. So she had about 500,000, went to this company, found a truck for 5 million, and the bank required that she puts in a deposit of 1.1 million. So she had 500, she needed 600,000 extra. So she's borrowing from bank A. So she went to bank B and borrowed 600 to get the 1.1. So she went to bank A, and she was able to pay the 1.1 million. 500 from herself and 600 as she's borrowed from Bank B. And then she started business. She got the truck and she started the transport business. And it went well for the first 4 months. Unfortunately, on the 4th month, the truck got an accident. And that was a difficult season for her. So the truck got an accident. She's meant to pay, I think, about 130,000 to Bank A, where she got the main facility, and a certain amount to Bank B, where she had gotten the 600. But she has no other source of income, absolutely no other source of income. So it meant that in those 4 months, she went into arrears. And in, the way banks work, if you go into arrears, you start being charged what is called past due interest on the amount that is in arrears. So it's much higher than the normal interest. I think the normal interest was about around 25,000 at the time. So the amount kept growing. Some months after, the repair works for the truck took about 4 months for the truck to be fully repaired and back on the road. But this is the only source of income she has. She has to cover arrears for 4 months, and the monthly repayments are still required from the 5th month and going forward. So things became pretty thick. And of course, what does the bank do when you're not paying your loan, per schedule? They want to auction. They come and they want to take the truck and sell the truck. So that happened. The bank came, knocked, and they wanted to sell the truck. She negotiated. 1 month goes, another month comes and goes, just negotiating and talking to the auctioneers. Please don't, please don't. Until she decided, this truck is going to be taken away. I will not be able to raise the amount of money that the bank requires me to pay. What can I do? When she was taking the truck, she had put one of her assets as security, and that was a farm, a 12-acre farm in a very, in a good place in Kitale, where you'd plant maize and get a lot of produce. But she decided the farm versus the truck brought more money, so she had to let go of the farm. Remember, this farm, her husband had bought it for her, and that was meant to be truly her home. But what did she do? She looked for a buyer and sold 12 acres of land to pay for the truck. Was that enough? No. She continued doing business. She continued business. But even after she paid the bank with the money from the farm, the bank was still knocking. You're not up to date with your payments. You're not up to date with your repayments. We want you to pay more, or else we'll still take the truck. So the land has already gone. The bank still wants to take the truck. What do you do? That was her only source of income, and she was using that money to feed the family, to pay school fees for the children, and to do the monthly repayments for the bank. So just juggling between all these needs was very difficult for her. Her husband had left for her some residential units somewhere, in a small town somewhere. And she decided, you know what, I'm going to sell these residential units as well, to just be able to keep this truck. So she sold the residential units, got some money, and went ahead and paid the bank. Okay, so these are 2 properties that have already been sold, just so that she could pay the bank. Was the story over with the bank? Was she now okay? No, she wasn't okay. So remember, she has a loan from Bank A, she has a loan from Bank B. She went to Bank C and borrowed money. Here, I'll tell you, she borrowed about 200,000 to continue sustaining the business. And continuously things became hard. Continuously things became hard. Of course, when she borrowed the 200, she had to put security. I mean, the bank will not give you money without security. So she put a plot, let me just call it a plot, or several plots that her husband had left her. Yet again, she had put that as security. So life became extremely hard, just juggling between school fees and all these needs. At some point, she just kept quiet. She didn't tell the bank what to do. She didn't follow up. She just kept quiet. And one day, a friend of her son saw that parcel of land in the newspaper being auctioned for about 1 million shillings. Remember, she took 200,000. And of course, the value of that land was more than 1 million. So the friend saw the land, and he was like, I know this parcel. So the friend went to this lady's son and asked him, is this your land? And the young man said, yes, it is. It is being auctioned. Luckily, at that point, the relationship between the friend and the son was such that they were able to sort of like help each other financially. And they were able to buy the parcel from the bank, and then it ultimately came back to the family. So imagine that story. A lady here who all she wants is to take care of her family. All she wants is to be able to pay school fees for her children. And she has done everything possible in her power. But there's a monster called interest. That it is so high, regardless of how hard she works, it is practically impossible to be able to run a business, to pay the interest, and to remain with something to take care of your family. And in that process, how much did she lose? She lost her 12-acre piece of land. She lost the parcels, the residential units that her husband had left for her. And though she didn't lose the third parcel, she ended up paying so much more for the third parcel than actually the amount she had borrowed, just because she went and borrowed from the bank. It's my prayer that that story, maybe some of us have never gone through something like that. Some of us do not even know that that happens. But the truth is, if you borrow money from the bank and you're not able to pay it, the bank will come for whatever you own. And they will come knocking very hard. And you might end up losing what you had even before you got the loan. I'll quote a verse in the Bible, and that's Proverbs chapter 22. And I'll actually just read verse 27. If you lack the means to pay, and here I mean you lack the means to pay the bank, your very bed will be snatched from under you. This is King Solomon writing. Way back, how long ago was the book of Proverbs written? I have no idea. Ms. Mcharo perhaps can tell us. But yes, so that's King Solomon telling us, if you borrow and you do not have the money to pay, your own bed will be snatched under you. Of course, this is Proverbs. When he says your own bed, what does that mean? That which you value the most, that which is most precious to you, will be taken away from you if you're not able to pay when you borrow. The other verse in the same chapter, verse 22, it says, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. Anytime you borrow, you become a slave to the lender. So the lender becomes the king, you become the slave. At the point of borrowing, it's exciting. You're getting money that you're able to do with 1, 2, 3 things. At that point, it's exciting. But in the event you will not be able to pay that debt, you are the slave. And the king will come pounding on you very hard and snatch your bed right under you. That's the reality of debt. That's the reality of debt, my friends. I don't know, how many of us do we look at the newspaper and just see the list of assets that are being auctioned? Vehicles, parcels of land, people's homes, they're being auctioned because they've been unable to pay because of debt. I know people who have made it their business to only buy assets that are being auctioned. So you are being auctioned. There are people out there who've made it their business, that every day they will look at the newspaper, they will look at, adverts of auctioneers and see what are these things that are being auctioned. Because many times they're being auctioned for a throwaway price. Would you want to be there one day? My prayer is that no. Yeah? So that's just to start us off. Let's see, any comments? I hope we've related with the story. I will say something. The 32-year-old lady is actually my mother. That's my mother's story, and that's our story. So when I was starting life, that is what I knew about debt. When I was starting to work, That's what I knew of the challenges of debt. And that influenced the person I became. Because deep down in my heart, I always knew, if you borrow and you're not able to pay, because how many times do we pass that parcel of land when we're going home, and it's no longer ours? And it's a place I went when I was a child. It's a place, you know, it's a place that was home, but it's no longer ours, just because of that debt. So that influenced the person I have become. I know that debt can come and really hurt you. So if there's any way to live debt-free, why not try it? Or if you must take debt, ask yourself very hard questions. Why am I taking debt? Is there a way of doing this without taking debt? Or if you're already in debt, is there anything you can do to get out of debt? Okay. Thank you for listening to that. Yeah, let me see any comments you have here. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I can see very many people have joined us. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, Wangare, Mercy. Thank you, Mturi. Picking up some lessons from this story already, it's sad how much debt can cost us, yes. Debt can cost us a lot. Yeah, on Instagram, many people, thank you guys for joining us. Yeah, we are all on fire. Yeah, so let's continue. I don't think we have any questions yet. Thanks, Sally, Catherine Wangare, yeah, Wanjiko, yes, a number of us are on Facebook. Thank you. So let's continue. So that's my background. I start life, I start working, and I understand that debt is bad. And Mcharo and I are trying to invest. And because of that knowledge, the first place we went to borrow was a Savo. And a Savo is different. A Savo, you will not hear these stories, these very, very negative stories about a Savo. Because in a Savo, you do not put an asset as security. What you do is you put, you save. You save, you get a number of shares, and then you're able to borrow 3 times the amount of shares you have saved. So that was our first place to run to. Because yes, we needed to invest, and we needed to borrow, but we didn't go to the bank the first time. After that, we needed to borrow some more. And the decision we made was that I was actually going to change jobs and look for a job in a bank. Why? Because while the market rate is, I talk about, here I mean interest rate, while the market interest rate is upwards of 15% at that time, if you're a staff member, you could borrow as low as 5% in the bank that I was able to find a job. So I knew at 5%, I'm not extremely exposed. And of course, this is on the back of conversations with my mother as well. So Mcharo and I decided to borrow. And we were very clear. My mother told me, do not borrow to buy a car, and do not borrow to buy a home. Let me tell you why it was important that we don't borrow to buy a home. I felt, or we discussed, and of course even my mother advised us that, so what happens when you borrow to buy a home, and you're living in that home, and you lose that job, and the interest goes to market rate? What happens? The truth is that the house will be auctioned, and you will move with your children and find another place to live. So the best thing was invest in something that is going to give you cash flows, that's supposed to give you income, that in the event you lose this job, the income that asset will give you will be able to then continue paying the loan. And that's what we did. So yes, we borrowed when I was working in Stanbic, Mcharo and I, and we were able to build the hostels, which was generating cash flows. And for the 1 month after Stanbic, before I went to Chase Bank, I mean, the loan didn't get to market rate, but if it was going to get to market rate, the income from the hostels was going to be enough. And that's what happened when I eventually left Chase Bank. I left Chase Bank with, the truth is, I had a 19 million bob loan when I was leaving Chase Bank, a huge amount. I think my monthly payments were about 150,000 a month when I was working, but immediately I left, the monthly repayments was above 350,000 because it went to market rate. But what saved us is that we had built the hostels and were generating cash flows from the hostels that was now able to pay that loan. But imagine if I didn't have the hostels. Imagine if that loan was for, let me call it conspicuous consumerism, even a home, or if, perhaps we had bought big cars. That would have meant that those assets would have been auctioned. A route that I was praying to God that I would never have to go. I remember there's a gentleman called Msioki. Msioki is very dear to us. Mcharo, he's actually Mcharo's brother, by extension. And Msioki was with us from the day we laid the first stone when we were building the hostels. And thereafter, he took up and he was the manager. And I told Msioki, after I left my job at Chase Bank, the responsibility to pay this loan is on your shoulders. You're the one paying this loan. So he had to be very good in terms of customer service. He had to make sure we had full occupancy, because he knew every month on the 24th, he's the one who is paying the loan. Yeah, so the burden was on him to pay the loan off the income from the hostels. And then I aggressively, after getting the second job, of getting another job, Mcharo and I, we were very clear we wanted to pay off that loan in 2 years. And we did. Tulifunga mshipi properly, and we paid that loan off in 2 years. What did we do? Mcharo had his job. We had the income from the hostels. I got a job, and I got a second job, a consulting job. And all the income went to paying that loan. And we'll pick some lessons from that as we go. Yeah? So when you have a loan, because I knew if I don't pay it off, the bank would come and sell the property. And I told Msioki that very well. Msioki, if we don't pay this loan, you have been here from the beginning. The bank will come and take this asset. They'll come and take this property. Then where will we go? What will we do? So we wanted to make sure whatever happens, we clear that loan. So we worked very hard. Every coin went to that loan. We stopped investing. We stopped building more. We stopped channeling our income. We used to buy land at home. We stopped buying land. We just stopped doing everything. And all we spent our money on was pay the loan and spend on food and shelter and school fees. That was it. In those 2 years, that was our focus. And with that kind of focus, we're able to finish paying that loan. Yeah? So that's our story, Mcharo and I, in terms of debt. And that was the end of debt as concerns us. We do not want to take another debt. That was it. Yeah, we thank God we're able to get through it. We thank God we're able to pay it off. Yeah, let me look through some questions as we continue. Yeah, Nguhimturi picking up some, okay, sorry. Christine Murugi, in modern day life, debt is made to look attractive and is aggressively marketed. That is very true. So you can get debt from many institutions. In fact, they have increased. Back then, I think it was only SACCOs and banks. So as you drive along, you will see this billboard with a very happy family because they have keys to their house. They have taken a mortgage. And you also want to go and take a mortgage. Yeah? You will be called by the bank and told, we have pre-approved you for a credit card. Come and pick your card. You haven't applied for a credit card, but they'll call you and tell you, we have already pre-approved you. Here is your credit card. So if you don't understand money, what do? You quickly get the credit card and you start using the credit card. Do you understand how much interest you would pay on a credit card? The interest, if you don't do your monthly repayments properly, the interest on a credit card on an annual basis is not less than 36%. If you don't do your monthly repayments as you spend. But when you're getting this card, it looks very attractive. Yeah? Now we have you can get unsecured loan, personal unsecured loan. You do not need security. An amount of up to 3 million. The bank is not asking you, what are you going to do with this money? They're very willing to give you the money, and that's why, people will take such amounts and buy furniture, go on holiday, just find trivial things to do with the money. Because the bank is not asking. It's not like a mortgage where they're saying you're buying a home or, personal unsecured. It's unsecured, you do with the money as you please. And it's been made very attractive. Let's go further down. You can borrow from a Shylock. I have no idea what rates they charge, but they charge exorbitant rates. they charge exorbitant rates. Previously, if you wanted to buy a car, I think you could only get the loan from the bank. Now, if you want to go to a car bazaar by the roadside, they'll tell you, take this car, we will finance you ourselves. You don't need to go to any bank. We will finance you. It's become extremely easy to get a loan. Now, there's something called mobile loans, and that's what is killing most of our young people. I can see our tech people just smiling. Some, F.I.R.E, Tala, Branch, Fuliza, what else? KCB and Pesa. I mean, there are many, and they're on your phone. You don't need to fill any form. You don't need to call anybody. At the click of some buttons in your phone, the money is in your account. And these guys are clever. They don't tell you what the interest rate is. They charge you a certain amount. So you borrow 1,000, you pay X amount. Try and calculate that interest rate. You might fall off the chair. I mean, it's exorbitant, but it's it's easily accessible. It's in your phone. And many, allow me to just call them, many young people are getting into debt because of these mobile apps a lot. And I was talking to a friend of mine. He runs a mobile app as well. And he told me he observed the lending patterns. They lend the most, say about 11 p.m., midnight, around that time. Why? Because that's the time people are drinking and they're stuck and you want to buy your friends. I think you want to buy for them a second round and you don't have, yeah? Or you finished the money you had and you want to continue drinking. So what do? You Fuliza, or you go to Tala, or you go to Branch. I'm very proud of the young man. I don't know whether he's listening. His name is Peter Gatura. And he told me that he saw that type of lending was lending for vanity. So while he still has the mobile app, he changed and he started lending to farmers. And I'm proud of him for that, because he lends to farmers to buy fertilizer. And then, you know, when they're being paid back, I don't know, it's not fertilizer because it's dairy. So I'm not sure what he lends for. But yeah, it's dairy farmers. So, and then when they're being paid, you know, their money is deducted and he's paid back. Something like that. So that's for a noble cause. These are people who are farmers and they're doing something productive. But when you're borrowing from Tala at midnight, what are you borrowing for? Okay. I want us to discuss another example. Let's talk about mortgages. I think there's once I talked about this in one of these F.I.R.E. Fridays. So you want to buy a home and it's attractive and it's 15 million, Bob. So you go to the bank and you borrow 15 million. And you want to pay for it over 15 years and your interest rate will be 14%. So how much will you be paying on a monthly basis? 200,000. So you can afford 200,000 from your salary. So you start paying 200,000. If you ask yourself, this house that I am paying for 200,000, if I was to rent it, how much would I get? You'd actually get anywhere between 70 to 80,000. Assume you even get 100. Let me be very generous. If you rent that house, you would get 100 and then get into your pocket, get another 100 and pay the bank. So you're paying 200,000 shillings, and the person who rents that house will get it at 100. I'd rather be the one to rent that house any day, and you continue paying your mortgage. But do we ever do that math, to just think about it that way? We always think, I'm getting a home. Of course, it's all advertised there that you can get a mortgage, so why not? And something else, the day, as I've said, the day you're not able to raise that 200, what happens? So it's very important that we just ask ourselves that question. And do the math for yourself. If you're to ever borrow, do the math. If you paid that loan over the 15 years, at the end, you will have paid 20 million in interest. So that house, you will have paid 35 million shillings for it. That just begs the question, is there a different way of getting a home? other than that mortgage? Is there a different way? Yeah? Okay. Sawa, let's see. Gerald, is optional poverty a good way to avoid debt? Okay, I hope Mr. Mcharo has answered that question somewhere. We'll see. Nguhimturi, borrow to invest, not to buy assets. That hits hard because most people borrow to buy assets that either have no return, homes, or assets that are consuming cars. Nguhimturi, now, those things that we are calling assets, the home and the cars, I'd like to call them differently. Those are liabilities. People borrow to buy liabilities because an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A car does not put money in your pocket. So you're right. People borrow to buy, not assets, but to buy liabilities. Look at a home as a liability. Look at a car as a liability. Maybe that will help us just change our minds a little so that you ask yourself, if I'm borrowing, I need to borrow for an investment. And the other thing you need to think about, what is this investment that will give me a much higher return than the interest I am paying? Remember, our interest rates are floating, meaning you don't have a fixed rate. You don't know that I will pay 10% for the term of this loan, right? So ask yourself, which asset is this that will give me a return higher than that interest? And in case that interest of 10% becomes 15 and 17, it will still give me a higher return. So yes, borrow to invest, but ask that question first. So a no-no, don't borrow to buy liabilities. That's a no-no. When it comes to investments, do the math and just check first. But also ask yourself, is there a possibility of me running this, either a business or this investment, without borrowing? Now I'll go to Savo's story. So for us, when we started Savo, again, remember, Mcharo and I have this history of what happened to my mother's assets, of our journey through the hostels, and now we have started Savo. So we asked ourselves, immediately we start Savo and go out and borrow, what will we be doing? We will be paying the bank a hefty amount in interest, transferring that interest to you, Nguhimturi, our investor. So a house that you would have bought from us at 1.5, you end up buying that same house at 3 million. Double the amount, because we need to pay the bank. So in that process, who have we enriched? We have enriched the bank. So when we started Savo, we asked ourselves that question and said, what we need is funding. And our customer is the investor. Is there any way that you can go to the investor and get funding from the investor so that this investor does not end up getting this house at 3 M, but they get it at 1.5? And that has worked for us. We've been able to get the funding from the investors, and we do not take bank loans as a result. So that's been our story in Savo. So if you're investing in Nguhimturi, are you able to still do that without borrowing? That's my question. Today, when I was speaking, after I've told you my mother's story, I spoke to her today and I asked her, and she told me her closing remarks were, if you must borrow, if you must, that's what she said. Don't borrow, but if you must, borrow for a business that has already stabilized. What Mr. Mcharo would call, you already have the product market fit, right? So borrow for a business. You want to scale up for a business that has already stabilized and you can see the growth, right? Of course, we would still tell you, even for that business, if there's perfect product and market fit, it means you already have customers who can fund you without you borrowing. So it goes back there. How else without borrowing? And if you think hard enough, you will find the answer. I'm certain of that. Yeah? Okay, Andrew, hey, as always, thank you for having this session. What differentiates Savo's payment plan from a bank loan? Is it debt by another name? Okay, so our payment plan is not debt. Our payment plan allows you to start, but as you're starting, remember, your circumstances could change midway. So you could start with a 5-year payment plan, right? But your circumstances would change midway, and you'll be able to increase the monthly payments that you do. Either because first your mindset has changed and now you're thinking more investment. So when you're starting, you were thinking, I can only afford 30,000 a month. But now as your mindset is changing, you make that 30,000 40, and you make monthly payments start increasing slowly by slowly. So instead of 60 months, instead of 36 months, you find you've gone to all the way to 24 months, right? Without having to pay the additional amount you'd have paid if you had gone all the way to all the way to 60 months. So our payment plan just gives you that flexibility. At the beginning, it allows you to start with an amount that you can afford, and then you keep growing it as you go, and then you're able to finish faster. Mr. Mcharo, we met when that story was going on, and I had a similar story from my dad, hence our skepticism about loans. Yes. Thanks, Honey, for that. Yes. So, of course, I could only share this other side of, of the family. But, yes, that's very true. Nick Washira, hi. Is there such a loan, such as a good loan, e.g. to buy assets like land? Yes. Now, I have said, Nick, an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. Let's start there. So if you're ever to borrow, if you borrowed to buy land, you're depending on your salary to pay that loan. That exposes you somewhat because this land is not giving you any cash flows. So in the event that your salary is cut short for whatever reason, how will you complete paying for the land? You end up being exposed. So that's just think about that. So if you must borrow, let it be something that's already generating for you cash flows. That if based on your salary cash flows sort of like stop, you're able to quickly switch to the other source of cash flows that's able to fund that. I have a friend called Raphael, and Raphael told me one day, only borrow an amount that if today you're told pay it off, you actually can pay it off. That means for some people it's 50,000, for some people it's 100,000. But let it be an amount that if today you're told pay it off, you actually have the means to pay it off without selling your assets, without selling the things that that you have invested in over time. You can actually pay it off. And then I was thinking about that today, and I said, if you're in that position, then why are you borrowing? Yeah? Because it means you actually are able to do whatever it was that you wanted to do without borrowing. Yeah. Hope I've answered you, Nick. My dear husband, Andrew, the difference with Savo is what happens when you're unable to pay. With Savo, you will never lose your money. So in case you've invested in Savo and the 30,000 becomes impossible to pay, we have conversations with you. Instead of saying we are going to auction, and when the bank auctions, remember, they auction and they don't give you the money over and above. In fact, they can't sell your asset for a value much lower than the value of the asset. So in Savo, we will ask you, do we move you to another project to just give you a bit of time for hopefully things to get better? And yes, we can move you to another project that gives you a longer term. The other option, we could ask you, maybe you have a one-bedroom. Would you like to take a smaller unit, perhaps a studio, that is now more affordable to you? And then that makes a difference. So, but there are times when somebody cannot completely be able to pay. And when somebody is completely not able to pay, circumstances have changed, we can refund the money. Of course, that's last resort. But if you're in that situation where things are completely thick, we refund your money. Yeah? Nick, again, how can you advise someone who wishes to invest with Savo but is heavily in debt? Do I invest concurrently or pay the loan first? Okay, Nick. That's a good question. I will tell you, Nick, my advice when you're already in debt, don't invest with us. Take that money and pay off that debt. And the reason I'm saying that, you want to shorten the period that you're paying